So, Professor, let me just begin. Coming off from that item, this is somehow a contrast to the earlier Pulse Asia survey that we saw earlier this week. Right now, it seems that more Filipinos are actually satisfied with Mr. Duterte's performance in the third quarter, and this is despite, although somehow the vulgar, as the surveys quoted, vulgar statements he said during that term. How can we make sense of this?
Well, I'm actually not surprised because President Duterte has very good communication skills to his political base, and he speaks and talks like a regular guy that makes him able to connect to his supporters. However, of course, we can also expect that the remarks on God as being stupid would really be not be very good for you sit well with even to his supporters because we are 85% Catholic.
Okay, so well, right now we can see here they are quite satisfied according to this SWS survey, but also during this period, we've also seen in the headlines repeatedly rather, that a lot of people are already complaining of the rising prices of goods, the rising inflation. There's also somehow some criticisms on how President Duterte's economic team is actually handling this issue. So why is this that despite these somehow grievances, you can still see President Duterte's rating, approval rating or satisfaction rating still rising?
Well, I think because his supporters and people who believe in him still think that he is able to address these problems within a given period, and that gives them hope that the inflation will eventually be will eventually decrease, the inflation rate will eventually decrease, and it will eventually be resolved.
Yes. So how long do you think the president can enjoy this somehow strong, this formidable satisfaction?
I'm not sure, because when you look at surveys, it's always the appreciation should always be based on the period within which it was taken and the context within which that particular period, survey was conducted. So we need to look at it from that perspective.
Okay, then. So let's just talk about the Pulse Asia survey. Then there we saw that the president's approval rating actually took a hit. Now this is all somehow during the survey period, there was a time when President Duterte somehow nullified the amnesty given to Senator Antonio Trillanes. Also in the news were, as I mentioned earlier, the inflation problems hounding the country. So what is the implications of these? We're seeing in another survey that it's negative. It's he's somehow suffering lost in his approval rating, but for this one, a lot of people are satisfied. How can we reconcile this?
Well, for instance, with regard to his actions towards Senator Trillanes, I mean, not everyone would, not every Filipino is a fan of Senator Trillanes, but then there are also those who think that what's being done to him and the way it is being conducted is already outside the rule of law and already undermining our political institutions. So and then I would not be surprised that some people may like what he's doing, but others may not really like what's being done to Senator Trillanes.
But what's the difference right now? Since, as you mentioned, it's not really in the realms of the rule of law already. But before, during some other critics of President Duterte, what actually happened to them wasn't really that in somehow that it doesn't really did follow strictly the rule of law as well. So what's different now with Senator Trillanes compared to his other critics like Senator Laila de Lima and ousted Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno?
Mainly because Senator Trillanes also has had a history of violating the law in the eyes of the people, and that may not have earned him so many fans. So that's probably the reason why some people also do not support him. But on the other hand, the way that it's being conducted is also changing his narrative, his personal and political narrative. I mean, to some, he's probably being already labeled as some sort of quote-unquote hero because of what's happening to him.
it's actually good that you mentioned that some actually are, well, some allied to him, or at least in the same political leanings, actually is saying that what the president, or not really the president, or what his administration is doing to him right now could make him the new Ninoy Aquino of this generation. Do you agree with that?
No, I'm not. I do not agree
Okay.
with that.
So why? Why could this be? What's the difference? What could be done more, or whatever, or what else?
I don't think he has earned that label
privilege, yes.
or that privilege, given his history. But I also admire his courage in taking the administration to task.
Well, speaking with taking this administration to task, the international observers are actually they're writing the headlines of this is the second opposition senator to be jailed or arrested under President Duterte. So, in the global stage, what do you think? How do you think foreigners, political, at least international political analysts, view us now with somehow the pending or the looming arrest of another senator?
Well, you know, the Western media is very liberal, very pro-human rights, and it makes a perfectly good story to, you know, to sort of write a story about people or politicians who fight for human rights.
Okay, so despite these conflicting somehow results of the surveys, Pulse Asia and SWS, what do you think could really be improved on, or what else could happen that would either pull down his approval rating or satisfaction rating further, or boost it up again?
You know, the continuing high inflation rate is also worrisome for a lot of people, and not only, I mean, when you experience, when you go to the palengke and
the grocery store,
yes, that's an objective indicator, meaning to say you experience it. But the manner in which it's also being covered by media and social media, it's also affecting people's perceptions, of course, of this administration.
So do you think Mr. Duterte and his administration can actually still enjoy all these, somehow, this high, strong ratings moving forward if this inflation problem remains unsolved?
Yeah, it's difficult to speculate, but I mean, we've had probably like two surveys already, and he still enjoys very good approval ratings, and that has also puzzled a lot of people who study surveys, and it remains to be seen how...
Puzzled in what way?
Because why is he still, I mean, despite
All these,
the
negative,
rhetoric,
yes.
the what do you call this, the high inflation rate, I mean, if you sum it up, he still enjoys a
very strong,
a strong
positive, yes.
A very positive trust and approval ratings from, I mean, the rest of the population.
Right.
So it's a puzzle, but it remains to be seen how he handles these things in the long term.
So, amid that, so what else do you think? Well, right now, despite all these, what you said earlier, rhetoric, despite the high inflation rate, what else do you think can Mr. Duterte actually do that would not really, what do you call this, that would not really affect his popularity or his satisfaction approval rating?
My sense is that he is really not very much worried about his popularity
right.
rating, because he continues to produce the same rhetoric, and I think it's only his advisors that are worried,
Really
because
worried.
some people are going to run for the Senate in the 2019 elections.
Oh, speaking of the 2019 elections, we also saw there recent surveys that somehow the potential candidates allied or at least linked to President Duterte actually somehow slipped during the rankings of the latest surveys then. So what do you make of this? With the president still enjoying quite a positive rating or approval rating, but the people actually that may have plans or is said to be running for senator in the 2019 polls actually slid in the surveys.
Yeah, thankfully.
Okay. Thankfully, they did.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess some people has really not established the connection, or maybe we're seeing a trend that some people allied with President Duterte may not necessarily make it in the 2019 elections.